Ask them what critical thinking is. They say that you should not easily accept other people's opinions. When someone says something, you need to accept it critically, you need to reflect, and you need to see if there are any logical loopholes. So most people, after understanding critical thinking, turn themselves into a nitpicker, a person who likes to argue with others, finds shortcomings and faults. In fact, it is not. The most important thing about critical thinking is to criticize your own ideas and constantly reflect on your own ideas. Why? Because when we are born as human beings and start to have thoughts, our brains have already shown cultural obstruction. As individuals, our experiences and perspectives vary based on our gender. Our genders shape our natural thought processes, and we may not even realize the hidden biases and prejudices that influence our thinking. These unconscious thoughts cloud our judgment and lead us to make unfair or discriminatory decisions without even realizing it. That is to say, you will use double standards for the same thing, treating others and yourself differently. It seems to be right, as if everyone does this, but in fact, this is not an advanced way of thinking. The real advanced way of thinking, critical thinking, tells us that the root of all correct thinking is that you can adopt the most appropriate way of thinking in any situation. This is called critical thinking. So it is aimed at ourselves, and we should often reflect on our own thoughts and ask ourselves whether the way I just thought is fair enough. Is my thinking just now profound enough? Does my thinking just now satisfy the principle of importance? Is my thinking just now logical? When you can regularly reflect on, criticize, and improve your way of thinking, you are a person who is constantly improving at the intellectual level. This is why I say this book is very important. I hope everyone can seriously understand critical thinking. What are the characteristics of critical thinking? Today, we need to clearly define what it means to truly have critical thinking. It has several characteristics. The first one is called cognitive humility. First of all, you have to be cognitively humble. That is, you have to admit that you are ignorant. You have to admit that you don't know everything. Only when you can do this, you have the possibility of improvement. Here I want to congratulate all the book lovers. When you decide to learn by listening to books, or when you decide to buy a book to learn, we can feel that you have cognitive humility. What is the opposite of it? It is called cognitive arrogance. It means that you don't need to tell me that I know this. I have been doing business for many years, don't I know this? I have seen many entrepreneurs say that those books are useless when they first communicate with us. Those books are all scams, and those who write books are not as rich as me. This is cognitive arrogance. When you are in a state of cognitive arrogance, you will not think that you are wrong, and you will not think that you need to improve. So the first is cognitive humility, and the second is called cognitive courage, which means we are willing to challenge our beliefs. After we have a belief, we especially hope that it is true, and we especially hope that it will not change. But the fact is that you often need to find out what you did or said in the past that was wrong. After reading this book, I went to our company to communicate with our employees, and I felt that I had made the biggest progress. I told our employees that we had previously asked everyone to protect the interests of the company, but now I realize that this is not right. When we let everyone protect their own interests, we lose fairness, which will cause our company to have a lot of enemies. When you cooperate with others, you always protect your own interests, right? You can't treat our partners fairly. This subverted my previous understanding of company management. The core is because I think you have to have the courage to do this. Cognitive cowardice means not daring to question what I knew in the past. This matter cannot be asked. For example, when the church believed that the world was centered on the earth and the sun, no one dared to challenge it. No one dared to imagine it, or to speak out if they knew it, or to speak out if they had doubts. But do you know who dared to challenge it? It wasn't Copernicus. I recently read a book and found that Leonardo da Vinci once wrote in his notebook that the sun does not move. Then the other stars orbit the sun. This was first proposed by Leonardo da Vinci, and because Leonardo da Vinci wrote this in a manuscript, he did not make it public. When he wrote this, Copernicus was still a child. So this is called cognitive courage. If you have cognitive courage, you can challenge your past cognition, which requires courage. The third characteristic is called empathy, which means that you can embrace opposing views. The opposite is egocentrism. When a person thinks about any problem from his own perspective, you will find that you are always right. You can always rationalize all the wrong things you do, right? You are self-centered and have difficulty accepting opposing opinions. You tend to hold others to the same standards as yourself, but may be hypocritical in different situations. I have a friend who often calls others immoral when doing business, but this is unfair judgment based on differing social classes and financial success. He asked if the person also earns more money from others. The person explained that he does it for survival and has to calculate his expenses. This dual standard is known as cognitive hypocrisy. The fifth one is cognitive perseverance. The corresponding phenomenon is called cognitive inertia. What is cognitive inertia? It's just that complicated. Forget it. This is too difficult. Isn't it tiring to live all day long? When we ask you to have critical thinking and think about the problem seriously, he will think that you don't need to work so hard and just go with your feeling. As long as you feel right, everything is right. It is cognitive inertia. He is unwilling to pursue science, justice, and logic. So you have to know that this complexity and frustration will definitely exist. In the process of our learning, there will definitely be complexity and frustration. You must have courage and perseverance to be able to do it. The sixth is called relying on rational reasoning. The opposite is suspicion of reasoning and emotionality. For example, a cult is a typical feature of which you can tell from an outsider that it is a scam. He teaches you about immortality all day long, but he himself is dead, so it is illogical for him to teach you about immortality. But these believers think that I love him, I follow him, and I am willing to do this and that. This is a complete loss of rational cognition and dependence on reasoning. The seventh article is called autonomous thinking, which is to become an independent thinker. The corresponding one is conformity of thinking or cognitive dependence. When we talk about books, we introduce these books on scientific psychology one by one, hoping that everyone will not rely on anyone and do not think that anyone is the best. You tell me the answer. Then why are there so many people in our lives who can defraud so much money? It is because we lack the ability to think independently that we rely too much on those false authorities. But it is very difficult to think independently and become an independent thinker. You have to do all the previous things well before you can do this. So, the above 7 characteristics do not exist alone, they are interdependent. That is, you have to have cognitive humility before you can have cognitive courage. You will be able to think in other people's shoes, have cognitive consistency, and then have cognitive perseverance. At the same time, you can learn to rely on rational reasoning and be independent in thinking. This is a whole set of things we all need to be able to do it.